Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air after taking the summer off. He's missed a lot. Kimmel says if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't get a hospital ICU bed. But I'm not sure if Jimmy was being sincere because he wasn't crying. Anyway, it's just funny hearing someone say, "I see you," who nobody actually sees. Oh, look, I don't want to suggest that Kimmel's show has become boring and predictable, but last night during the taping, people in the studio audience were changing the channel.
The hallowed halls of late-night television, once echoing with roars of genuine laughter, have become a strangely silent battlefield. An almost palpable tension hangs in the air, signalling a shift in power, a reordering of the comedic hierarchy. On this evolving stage, an unexpected warrior has emerged, not with a sword, but with a smirk and a mic, ready to challenge the established order.
The worst part about this whole thing is that his presidency is ripe for mockery and ridicule and even gentle humor if you like him. I mean, just Hunter Biden alone, just in the recent stuff, I mean, you could go on forever. But Kimmel has abdicated his role of a comedian. He's now just a political hack. Which I'm grateful for, because then I get the turf to myself. I'm not a comedian, but I just filled the gap. That's why I'm beating him every night, because he sat there with that guy and basically he spoon-fed him like he was a dementia patient at a restaurant.
This new dynamic has one of late night's former kings caught directly in the crosshairs, looking less like royalty and more like a relic from a bygone era. What truly unfolds when unvarnished, razor-sharp mockery crashes headfirst into the meticulously scripted world of Hollywood's heartfelt hand-wringers? The answer might just redefine late-night comedy as we know it, as Greg Gutfeld has launched a comedic siege against Jimmy Kimmel, systematically dismantling not just his jokes, but his very relevance.
Kimmel actually said in that thing that, you know, the people who voted for Trump, they just don't know what they've done. You know, they don't realize how badly they've hurt themselves. And so it's not a concern for others that you're seeing with this. It's an expression of ego, that they are smarter than all of these people. And as always, when you're a slave to your ego, it's always somebody else's fault, you know, and therefore they cannot see their own errors, their own mistakes. You know, if you are open up to being wrong, you're more than likely going to end up right once in a while. But these guys have been wrong for 8 years. They've been wrong for 8 years because they can't let go of their egos.
It all seemed to happen in a flash, like a meticulously planned comedy ambush. One moment, the late-night landscape was predictable, almost sedate. The next, Greg Gutfeld parachuted in, described by some as a caffeinated raccoon with a grudge and a mic. This vivid imagery perfectly captures the chaotic, almost feral energy he brought to a genre that had perhaps grown too comfortable, too complacent.
Kimmel cries about cancel culture. Kennedy, in a recent interview, Jimmy Kimmel blames liberal cancel culture, of all things, and their perpetual manufactured outrage for helping get Trump reelected. He specifically talked about their attacks on comedians. Tonight, Jimmy Kimmel fought back tears while falsely claiming Donald Trump attacked LA firefighters, prompting the LA Fire Department to attach a hose to Jimmy's face.
Suddenly, the polite, often self-congratulatory banter that characterized much of late night was shattered by Gutfeld's approach. He didn't just offer a critique. He staged what felt like a public dismemberment, armed only with punchlines. He wasn't just aiming to roast Kimmel. Observers noted he seemed determined to launch him into orbit, using pure, unadulterated sarcasm as his rocket fuel, leaving emotional skid marks across the industry.
True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare.
But this relentless comedic assault wasn't merely a spontaneous outburst. To understand its depth, one must look at its target. Before the tears and the earnest political pleas, there was a very different Jimmy Kimmel. Many vividly remember his reign as the proud co-host of The Man Show, a veritable carnival of beer-chugging, bikini-clad women bouncing on trampolines, and a brand of humour so edgy it constantly flirted with the boundaries of taste.
Terrible night for everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
Oh. You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it. You big Now,
it was a time of raw, unapologetic, and often deliberately crude entertainment, a far cry from the persona now presented. Fast forward to today, and the contrast is jarring. The Kimmel on our screens now often drapes himself in the soft velvet of woke monologues, delivering tearful lectures on climate policy or political outrage, aspiring to be the conscience of America. Greg Gutfeld, observing this dramatic metamorphosis, didn't see a glow-up or a laudable evolution. Instead, he diagnosed it as a glitch. In his view, this wasn't a natural progression, but a fundamental system error, a descent that prompted what he described as a collective, nationwide eye roll. This transformation, he argued, was more than just a rebrand. It was a betrayal.
The killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a piece.
Gutfeld's core accusation against Kimmel is devastatingly simple yet profoundly challenging. Jimmy Kimmel, he claims, has abdicated his role of a comedian. In Gutfeld's unsparing eyes, Kimmel has shed his jester's cap to become little more than a political hack, a mouthpiece for a specific agenda rather than an impartial purveyor of laughter for all. This critique sharpens considerably when Gutfeld points to Kimmel's interviews. He suggests that Kimmel now spoon-feeds carefully curated talking points to his guests, treating them, and by extension the audience, like dementia patients who need to be gently guided to the supposedly correct conclusions, rather than engaging in genuine, challenging dialogue.
Dana, I'll start with you. It was a terrible night for women. Trump won more women. He won the popular vote. What are these people moaning about?
I don't know. I mean, today Brian Stelter tweeted that there was a talent agent who told him that a lot of members of the media are questioning whether they have it in them to cover another Trump cycle. And then they wonder why the working class is like, guys, you are so out of touch with what real work is. And also, they didn't really cover the Biden administration. They didn't cover the border.
This perceived abandonment of comedic neutrality and critical thinking, Gutfeld posits, created a significant vacuum in the late-night sphere. And into that void stepped Gutfeld himself, somewhat unexpectedly becoming a ratings powerhouse by simply daring to fill the gap left by those comedians who, in his view, chose partisan preaching over universal punchlines. Delving deeper, Gutfeld offers a kind of psychological diagnosis for Kimmel's transformation and his current comedic output. He suggests that Kimmel's actions are fundamentally fueled by a formidable ego, one that acts as an impenetrable barrier to self-reflection and prevents him from ever entertaining the possibility, let alone admitting, that he might be wrong.
Oh, I have a few names to add. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, the town crier. All out outlets ignoring Biden's revolving door of gaps, his constant forgetfulness, weird rambling speeches being let off stage. All the while you told us there's nothing to see here. Meanwhile, any parent can see this face means you got to change a diaper.
This ego, Gutfeld implies, is evident in Kimmel's allegedly condescending tone towards his audience, particularly those who don't share his precise worldview. There's a quiet yet persistent implication in Kimmel's delivery that they just don't know what they've done, or don't realise how badly they've hurt themselves, a sentiment Gutfeld seizes upon. Gutfeld frames Kimmel as a slave to his ego, someone who has been demonstrably wrong for 8 years, precisely because he cannot let go of this inflated self-perception. This internal dynamic, according to the critique, means it's always somebody else's fault, preventing any genuine introspection or course correction, and leading to glaring public contradictions.
So these fellows are experiencing deep mental pain. And it's not just them. Journalists are now offering tips to deal with their disappointment, frustration, even fear. And I get it. That's normal after any loss. I'm still mad about losing world's sexiest man to Johnny Depp. But why would people feel fear? Maybe because their only news sources are constantly telling them Trump's going to turn America into Germany. But you know who felt actual fear during the Biden administration? People who had to ride the subway.
With the precision of a seasoned prosecutor cross-examining a hostile witness, Gutfeld then dramatically unfurled what he termed Kimmel's hypocrisy mixtape. This was a meticulously curated collection of moments from Kimmel's past that stand in shocking, almost comical contrast to his current moralizing stance and public pronouncements. He gleefully reminded viewers of Kimmel's early career, a period teeming with the kind of edgy, sometimes overtly offensive sketches and segments that would undoubtedly trigger a firestorm of cancellations today. The infamous sketch where Kimmel appeared in blackface impersonating NBA star Karl Malone was resurrected, presented as irrefutable proof of this glaring disconnect between past actions and present preachings.
If you're open up to being wrong, you're more than likely going to end up right once in a while. But these guys have been wrong for 8 years. They've been wrong for 8 years because they can't let go of their egos. It's true in the media. It's actually, you know, it's true among the never Trumper Republicans. If you look at the sourpusses, it's an internal emotional feeling that why him, Trump, and not me? Whether it's like, I don't know, Bill Kristol or Jonah Goldberg. It's like these are guys that were generally normal, and then their egos just kind of like they just took it hard. And
beyond historical hypocrisy, the spectacle of Jimmy Kimmel frequently crying on national television became a particular focus of Gutfeld's relentless derision. He framed these emotional displays not as genuine outpourings of heartfelt concern, but as performative acts, often lacking in dignity and, Gutfeld implied, strategically deployed for maximum effect rather than authentic expression. The savage critique reached its zenith with lines like "Kimmel cries more than my toddler" during nap time, and with less dignity, a barb so cold it purportedly gave Kimmel's ratings frostbite. Gutfeld further painted Kimmel's show as having devolved into little more than a TED talk wrapped in awkward laughter, or something akin to a self-help podcast host minus the actual help or the audience retention. Perhaps the most biting and memorable metaphor Gutfeld employed was likening Kimmel to a Prius with a megaphone. Quiet, smug, projecting an air of unassailable moral superiority, but ultimately useless in a real race for comedic relevance or genuine cultural impact. It was an image designed to stick, and it did. While Kimmel was allegedly delivering these tear-soaked sermons and earnest appeals, a very different, much louder, and undeniably more boisterous revolution was brewing in the late-night ratings war. The numbers, as they often do, began to tell an undeniable story. Greg Gutfeld's show started to gain serious traction, consistently challenging and often surpassing Kimmel's long-established program in viewership. Gutfeld's explanation for this upset was disarmingly straightforward. He claimed he was winning by skipping the Hollywood-approved formula, and instead doubled down on what actually makes people tune in: humour. He argued that traditional late night had become stale, and his untraditional approach, dismantling the very idea of Jimmy, was precisely its appeal. In this new landscape, Gutfeld's triumph suggests that unapologetic, authentic humour might just be the ultimate rebellion, and he its unlikely champion